Hey, what's going on, Kaleido fans? I wanted to go over opening up the back of this M2 roaster today. Maybe you damaged your USB cable, maybe you need to inspect your motor coupling. It's just regular maintenance items that may come up as you own this roaster. To begin with, find the Allen keys that came with your roaster and loosen these two top screws right here. There's also a brass thumb screw at the base of the roaster. This is pretty much common for the M2, the M6, and the M10. Some roasters, these screws are slotted. On my M2, they are not. So you will need to completely remove the screws. Once those screws are removed, carefully take the metal housing off the back of the roaster. Make sure not to damage any of the wiring. As I mentioned a minute ago, you may be just replacing your USB cable. To replace your USB cable, you'll need to cut these zip ties and simply unplug your USB cable. You can buy a replacement USB-A to USB-A from KaleidoRoasters.com. That's probably your most common reason to get into this roaster. Another reason might be to replace a heating element. To replace a heating element is quite simple. There's two brass thumb screws. Hopefully you can see. I probably need to reposition a little bit. There's two brass thumb screws on this roaster that you will loosen. On this particular side, we'll need to remove this exhaust vent. With the exhaust vent removed, you may opt to unplug it from the circuit board, or you can just set it aside. Carefully pull the heating element out of the roast chamber. I'd probably recommend undoing the wires beforehand. I'm not going to undo the wires today. Simply rewire your new element if you're changing your element out, and carefully route it back in to the roaster. Again, tighten it down with these brass hand thumb screws, just finger tight. Before we put the exhaust vent back on, I'm going to show you the motor coupling. After quite a bit of use, this motor coupling is kind of a spring and it can become damaged or break within time. To remove it, use one of your smaller Allen wrenches and just loosen it. You will probably have to take this rear motor off. To reinstall the exhaust, let's line it up with the holes and reinstall. You may need to do this if your exhaust fan were to ever fail. Again, it's extremely easy to access and replace the exhaust fan. We have all these parts at KaleidoRoasters.com. While we're in here, let's just take a look at the circuit board. This is your main circuit board. Your incoming power comes through this hole. On the M2 only, there is a on-off switch. When it is in the off position, it'll only run one of the two heating elements. when you put it into the on position, it will run both heating elements. So note that this is just an option on the M2. It comes on all the M2s. So we have our main board. On the back side of this board, there's a 12-volt control board. I don't think you'll ever really need to dive this deep into your roaster, but just know that these do exist in here. You have your power distribution block for your heating elements. That's about it. So on the other side of your board, there is your ET probe. This is your environmental temp probe. They do go bad from time to time, but if you ever need to adjust the depth or replace it, this is where you would do it. It's kind of a spring clamp, and it can be kind of hard to line up. Mine has been pushed all the way in. To reassemble the dust cover, make sure all your wires look like they're in a good position. Make sure that your probe is in the proper depth and everything looks good. This part, you kind of need to carefully spring it out over the wires. You don't want to damage the wires. The brass thumb screw, kind of difficult to get started. And then the 2 screws on top. The components will be slightly different on the M2, the M6, and the M10, but the overall process is the same. I can tell you on the M6 and the M10, they utilize 3 heating elements, so one side will have 2, the other side will have 1. If one of the heating elements goes out on the side with 2, you will need to remove both heating elements at the same time and then replace the damaged heating element. So there's some of the basics of maintaining your Kaleido Sniper roaster to keep it running for a long time. These are built very high quality. They have replaceable components. You can get the components from www.kaleidoroasters.com. If you have any questions on servicing or maintaining your roaster, you can feel free to reach out on our website. Thanks for watching.